material scam. There's a whole bunch going on, lots to get to. Let's get to it first. We're going to start at the policing stuff. And Brian Passafume says, don't worry, coffee's on us. Toronto Police Operations says, due to public safety concerns, Avenue Road overpass is now closed. There will be no access to the bridge. Police are on scene to enforce this in order to keep demonstrators and passing traffic safe. Stay tuned for updates. We have video live from there, not live, sorry, recorded at the time, and here the police are telling them to not pass this line. They're not allowed to join the protest. They promptly ignore the police and continue onto the bridge. So that's pretty wild. Here's what happens or happened
on our side anyway, just on the other side. So our rights shouldn't be being infringed on because we've been peaceful on this bridge every single time we've come here. We've stayed safely on the sidewalk every time. We've always followed law enforcement.
You can push.
From the other side.
They can't do anything. They can't do anything. Thank you. Thank you, officer. Thank you, officer. Thank you, buddy. Stay all the way to the bridge.
So, I mean, the Toronto police say one thing and another thing is happening, right? So you're not allowed to come up here. Well, we're just going to walk around you, and they did. Kirk says Toronto police delivering coffee and food to the pro-Hamas protesters illegally blocking roads. You can't make this up. Probably one of the most embarrassing and pathetic moments in Canadian history, along with the Liberals getting a thank you shout out from Hamas leadership and tackling kids who were playing hockey outside without a mask. This can't be the new Canada. Well, I wish it weren't so, but it is so. And so we have to deal with that, right? David Mulrooney says, here's video of Toronto cops delivering coffee to anti-Israel protesters, sparks outrage. National Post is reporting this. The police are becoming our little messengers, says the grinning man wearing the jacket and the keffiyeh. I'm not sure how to say that. Pretty wild stuff. What do you say? What do you say to this, right? Here is a Toronto police officer who deleted her entire account because of the backlash. And what she said was, our officers are managing a dynamic situation in performing a helpful act today. Our officers' motivation was to help keep tensions low and should not be interpreted as showing support for any cause or group. Our officers continue to work to de-escalate these demonstrations. And it continues, but her whole account's deleted, so you can't find it. There's another tweet I have to show you of hers as well, but people were very, very upset. Jay says, what happened to the account of the cop justifying serving coffee to terrorist supporters? She deleted her tweet. Did she buckle under the pressure, or did something more nefarious occur? The backlash on her tweet was swift. Did anyone get a screenshot by chance? And people were pointing out that there was more than one tweet. The first one says, officers in Toronto are often publicly criticized for heavy-handed tactics used during demonstrations. Today, given a very dynamic situation, officers continued to work to de-escalate these demonstrations and maintain calm and the public safety. And then it's the same one responding to Sayad. She says, our officers are managing a dynamic situation and performing a helpful act. And I read that already, right? So pretty crazy. And it's pointing out the ratio as well. So people were very upset. So 338 responses to 71 likes and 54 responses to 10 likes. People were not happy, and the backlash was swift. Orwell on his iPhone draws this comparison. He says, you're blocking traffic in Ottawa. We must crush you. Here's 20 seconds of remembering that.
What's happening here? Wow, what is this lady doing? Trampling horses, trampling. Stop it! Stop it! Look! Oh my God! They just trampled this lady.
So this is the response to the peaceful protest in Ottawa, right? And here's coffee and donuts.
Otherwise, he would have said, "Okay, I understand." Okay, I'll just ask. Just so. Sorry, it's the person with the vest.
Jihad.
Pretty wild, right? So it is scary what's going on, because why are the police behaving that way towards peaceful Canadians, absent everything else? That question has still not been answered, right? We've got more questions than answers. Anne is responding to the tweet by the police officer, and she says, this is 12 weeks now of protests by anti-Israel, pro-Hamas people. And again, these protests are paid for, and we have evidence that they're paid for by China. So I'm not just saying that. Andy Lee was talking about how WeChat was talking about it, coordinating it, so on and so forth. Anyway, back to this. No Canadian has the power to change what's happening a world away. Nope. We have laws that are being ignored by the very entity hired to ensure they're followed. And yeah, so people are upset and justifiably upset with what's going on. Dan McTeague, gas price wizard, says another Hamas disruption causing major traffic backup on the QEW eastbound at Trafalgar Road Bridge. Where's the OPP or Halton Regional Police? So are they getting, somebody says maybe out of the Tim Hortons getting them a coffee. Boom, zing, right? Like they got him, right? Because it doesn't seem like the police are interested in actually applying the law at all. Here's what's happening in Seattle, right? The current scene in Seattle, major highway shut down for hours. Police do nothing. So these guys are walking around in a circle across a 4-lane, like 401 style highway. And like, what do you do, I guess? I'm sorry, I coughed into the microphone. I muted it on this scene, I guess, and then I changed it to this scene, and then which did not have the muted level, and then I coughed. So sorry about that. But yeah, so people are walking around on a highway. I coughed a bunch, and here is Avivia, and she says, why are Toronto police delivering coffee to people? Sorry, this should have been moved. There was one more. Yeah, here it is. Finally over after nearly 3 hours. Far-left activists and pro-Palestine Hamas supporters were allowed to simply walk off the I-5 without any repercussions. This could set a dangerous precedent. What happened here? Well, holy smoke, right? I can't believe even that we lived through a period of time where people were lighting things on fire on railroad tracks and police were like, well, that's dangerous. We're not going to make arrests. And now people are just saying, oh, they're blocking highways and just getting away with it. Yeah. Yep. They've been doing this for a long time. If you're ideologically aligned with the narrative, if you're pushing the thing that the powers that be want to uphold or want to be in the news cycle or whatever, then you're pretty well protected. And if you say something like, we demand freedom and we demand our basic rights, you need the War Measures Act to crush that movement, right? Get the horses and trample these people. Wild. It's wild stuff. Here is NWO, New World Order. They're establishing a new world order, and I know I said this at the opening, but it is itself a thing. And I think it's one of its main tenets. And I think there are multiple tenets of it, like control of, if gold is the backing of the currency, they control both the currency and the gold, and that's two tenets. If the backing of the currency is the securities, they control the securities and the currency. You understand what I'm saying? That's the tenets of a new world order or a world order. And they're trying to establish a world order around cryptocurrency. And I think they're going to use that world order around cryptocurrency to freeze out Bitcoin. I think they're going to try and make Bitcoin obsolete in some way by only allowing their crypto to be the crypto or whatever it is. It's our app, right? You can't use Bitcoin on our app. Anyway, this is speaking on a World Government Summit panel titled, Are We Ready for a New World Order? Global leaders for tomorrow for the WEF, Pippa Malmgren, announces the arrival of central bank digital currencies. And well, I mean, everybody's as excited as you can expect. Here we go. Here's Pippa.
What underpins a world order is always the financial system.
Oh my gosh, too fast. Hold on. All right, here's the right speed. Here we go.
What underpins a world order is always the financial system. And what we're seeing in the world today, I think, is we are on the brink of a dramatic change where we are about to, and I'll say this boldly, we're about to abandon the traditional system of money and accounting and introduce a new one. And the new accounting is what we call blockchain. It means digital. It means having a almost perfect record of every single transaction that happens in the economy, which will give us far greater clarity over what's going on. It also raises huge dangers in terms of the balance of power between states and citizens. Most people think that digital money is crypto and private, but what I see are superpowers introducing digital currency. The Chinese were the first. The US is on the brink, I think, of moving in the same direction. The Europeans have committed to that as well.
So that was back in 2022, right? You could see it in the background, the date 22. But still, the whole idea is moving in this direction. The whole point of money moving in this direction, and has been since at least 22, before that as well. Here's just some footage I came across. It's the Pope Benedict bowing to a Rothschild.
Must see.
So that's interesting, right? One of those things where the more connected people like that are, the less I believe that they're acting of their own motivations, let's just say. British Film Institute places a trigger warning on screenings of classic James Bond films that will cause offense. So they don't want people acting like James Bond. And James Bond was, a man's man, right? A womanizer and a spy who could do anything and fix anything and take out the bad guys and so on and so forth. And so you got to get rid of those heroes, right? He's wrong. James Bond is bad and racist and anti-Semitic and stuff. Don't take this as an example, right? He's a bad guy. So it's the step before completely removing it or rewriting it, right? They're rewriting a whole bunch of Roald Dahl stuff. So censorship is very, very prominent in different mediums, different ways to censor as well. They did that with the books. They did that with, they make changes in textbooks and things like that, and that sets the precedent, that sets the direction, and then all the books align with that scientific update and so on. And then the previous stuff is kind of lost to time unless you can find an old book that references it. Anyway, let's move on and let's talk about your health, or our healthcare anyway. Ken says what started out as a rural ER closure rural ER closures is now hitting larger urban centers with temporary closures, and Saskatoon is having their hospital emergency room closed down, and it raises red flags for healthcare providers, right? Saskatoon City Hospital saw an emergency room closure on Tuesday, which is raising alarm bells for healthcare workers across the province. Brittany Ellis, an emergency physician in Saskatoon, said emergency physicians have been shouting for many months about the challenges they're facing. This is increased acuity, increased volumes, looking back 15% on years since 2020 in Saskatoon, Ellis said. She said patients are getting sicker and presenting later. Ellis said this is a complex problem, noting that emergency rooms are a place patients go when there's nowhere else to go, but it's also a space where people go if they're very sick. Closures are nothing new. They've been happening in rural Saskatchewan for a very long time now, but this is the very first one in my time, in 5 years here, that it's happened in Saskatoon. The provincial NDP reported in mid-December 23 that obstetrical services across the province were disrupted for a total of 98 days in hospitals between January and August of last year. Ellis said it was predictable that these conditions were going to get worse, pointing to an increasingly aging population. So there's been a bit of a lack of planning in dealing with that initially. She said extra weight is being put on healthcare providers, resulting in more burnout, fatigue, and stress. We're seeing a higher turnover. We're seeing people decreasing the amount of clinical work they're doing because of the impact of some of the demands in our department. Ellis pointed to the stress created by admitting more patients than they have beds for, saying it's definitely stressful for patients and families to be placed in a hallway, but it's also stressful for the service providers. She said that if they're to address these complex issues, planning needs to happen. So, right, I think it's funny that they're always asking the NDP, right? Global News asks the NDP health critic, Vicky Mowat. She said the Saskatchewan Health Authority the provincial government released a plan almost 2 months ago to alleviate the emergency room pressures, but claimed the plan wasn't getting results. So there's always people who are critical of what's going on. And we have a lot of money tied up in administration for hospitals and things like that. And it seems like our money could be better spent on frontline service rather than all that administration. But there's no political will to get that kind of stuff done. Here's Chris, and he says, friendly reminder that no elected officials in Canada are calling for the removal and or investigation of Dr. Theresa Tam. The shots continue unopposed. Right. Nobody's calling, like in Florida, they're calling for the removal of mRNA shots due to the bad safety track record, right? So how long before that goes worldwide? How long before Canada catches up to that? And if that happens up here, is anybody held accountable for the years where it was pushed by the government? I'm not holding my breath. I hope I'm wrong. Here is Rule 303. And yesterday I reported that St. Louis put in a mask mandate. And I said, we'll see how that goes. I'll let you know if there's any updates on it, because it seems pretty, as rock solid as these things go, right? No, I'm not wearing a mask and you can't make me, right? Good luck. So Rule 303 gives us an update. Emergency mini thread on an insane drama unfolding in St. Louis. I heard this from a pal who teaches at Washington University, 1 of 10. So take this with a grain of salt, but still, right? Yesterday, out of the blue, the health director, who's pictured smiling below, staged a public policy push by imposing a mask mandate on the city. Evidently, she did this without consulting, maybe without even warning, her mayor, the religious heads of hospital, local presbyters, and big shots. This was so irregular at first, people thought the order might be a prank. Turns out it was real. Her reason for issuing the mandate was to reduce the strain on the hospital system, which she said was floundering under a surge of respiratory illness. Interestingly, she did not justify masking as a response to COVID only, but to flu and RSV, citing case increases of 50 and 150% above the 5-year average. Naturally, this freaked people out even more, because linking mask mandates to bugs other than COVID implies that they might never go away. The peasants would have revolted, but they didn't get a chance. The nobles beat them to it. People with titles complained in chorus. Could the director of health department and infectious disease physician really make a mistake this big and dumb? Why they'd be like, that'd be like finding out the president of Harvard is an imposter. The hospital made a statement: "We are not overwhelmed. So far, this is a normal winter." Ouch. This made it obvious that she hadn't bothered to talk to them, but had simply used the shortage of ICU beds copy pasta from 3 years ago. St. Louis doc must really like this gal, because they helped her further in the ditch by pointing out a few flaws some of the readers of this thread have already noticed. In her analysis, the 5-year average includes an anomaly winter, 2021, with the lowest flu in the modern history of records. That's weird, right? So that means every normal year will be above the 5-year average until it excretes that anomaly. Now, this mistake, too, could have been easily avoided just by talking to a few members of the profession that she makes policy for. But incompetent people don't like talking to competent ones. It's not fun for them. Feels like being told you're wrong all the time. It feels like not being in charge. They learn to avoid the experience. Today, the mask mandate was rescinded, lived less than 24 hours. To save face, they let her issue an update that strongly recommends masking. I mean, you can't have your health director losing her self-confidence in the midst of a crisis she imagined. So, and you can read more at the link here. So that's the thread. Pretty wild stuff. So the St. Louis mask mandate, less than 24 hours. That's it. That's it. All done. And weird, wild, and wacky. I don't think that there's any justification for that, but it's kind of delicious that it blew up in her face so spectacularly. Right? Anyway, Vivek Ramaswamy is pointing this out. New York Post is reporting USA Boxing slammed for new transgender policy that allows biological men to compete against women. I mean, jeepers creepers. Men are stronger than women. They might not be 3 times stronger than women, but they're a lot stronger than women. Maybe 30%? Vivek Ramaswamy said, "We used to call this violence against women. Now we call it a victory for trans rights. The trans cult is a mental health epidemic in our country, and it needs to stop." So, yeah, can you imagine? I mean, we've seen already an MMA fight between a trans woman who's a man and a genuine biological female born as a woman female. And that's pretty wild, right? Like, how does that happen? It's pretty crazy, right? It doesn't seem right. Hello, everyone. Thanks very much for watching. This is just a short version of a longer show. If you'd like to get the whole show, you can go over to CanadaPoly.com and sign up for a subscription. Just look in the drop-down tab for Shop and Donate and look for subscriptions, and you'll get immediate access to the full show. Love to see you. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful